Hello, everyone. I'll introduce you to our moderator at 2 o'clock today. It's Elizabeth Moy. Elizabeth Moy is program coordinator at the Rose Art Museum. She's chair of the Waltham Cultural Council. And oh my goodness, she is also the force behind Blueprint Art, which is a community arts project too. Elizabeth, I'll let you take it away.
Well, thanks, Alana. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Waltham Open Studios Artist Chat Ways to Build Community. I am incredibly honored to be here with you all and so grateful for the opportunity to share this space this afternoon with all of these wonderful artists. Before I begin by introducing the artists on the panel today, I just would like to extend a huge congratulations to all of the artists that are participating this weekend. And to Alana for her work organizing this incredible event, and all of the artists that sit on the planning committee for Open Studios, for Guido and for Sarah for organizing, really orchestrating this incredible opportunity for Waltham, not just the artists, but for the community at large. Most people, I think, take for granted how much work goes into putting these things together. And so I just want to acknowledge your work and also to say thank you as a community member, because what an amazing opportunity to have 2 full days of free arts programming, artist talks, demos, workshops. It's really, really amazing, and quite an opportunity to see you all pivot virtually, which is also incredible. And I just want to thank Alana again for introducing me. Again, my name's Elizabeth Moy, and I'm a photo-based artist working here in Waltham, but I spent the last 6 years really focusing on creative community engagement. So through my role at the Waltham Cultural Council, and also starting my own arts platform, Blueprint Projects, which has really been an opportunity to really think about arts as a catalyst for social change. And that has taken on various different forms. I'm also the program coordinator at the Rose Art Museum, which still some people don't know exists. We have a free and amazing world-class museum that's normally open to the public every 5 days a week. And so once we are able to open up to the public, everyone should take advantage of this incredible resource. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce all of these incredible artists. I'm going to start with Marian Bolelek. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did, yeah.
Okay,
thank you.
Mayor is a fiber artist living in Waltham. He graduated from Mass Art as a jewelry and metal smithing major in 2012 and accidentally transformed into a fibers artist when he learned about needle felting. Next up, maybe just want to wave to everybody in the audience, is Maria Fodonakis. Maria is an amazing comics artist and illustrator living in Waltham. And her latest project is a memoir visual diary of her life in the pandemic with a young child called Extraordinary Times. And it's been ongoing since March. Her fictional narratives focus on displacement, alienation, and the human costs of climate change. Welcome, Maria.
Thank
and
you.
Mayor. Next is Barbara Ayala Rugg Diehl, or Bard, as she also likes to be called. Barbara is a mixed media artist originally from Nevada, who stayed to live and work in Waltham after earning her bachelor's and master's degree at Brandeis. She often combines her art with other fields of expertise, such as sustainable development and social policy. She began her career as a visual artist 2 years ago, and her work has been featured in solo and group shows in 8 states across the country. Welcome, Bard. Next up is Ron Roberge. Ron lives and works in Waltham as well. He is trained as an architect, and his art has become an integral extension of his career. He's a member of the Boston Society of Architects, American Institute of Architects, and a student and supporter of the New Art Center in Newton. Who do we have next? Well, Will Vanaria, hello, is a metalsmith whose studio is in Waltham. His jewelry features non-traditional materials and bold, geometric 20th century inspired designs that encourages us to question and even mock contemporary society. And last but not least—
The rumors are true, I do exist.
Last but not least is Susan Siefer. Susan lives in Waltham. She is an abstract painter as part of the River Street Artists in Waltham Mills. She exhibits widely in New England and is an initiated member of the National Association of Women Artists. So welcome, everybody.
Thanks.
So our panel is called Ways to Build Community. And so it obviously makes sense to start there. I would love to sort of kind of just open up the conversation today to sort of think about what does it mean to be a wider Waltham artist? You know, say for Susan, who does have a space in the Mills, I think it'll be interesting to hear from you all about what that means.
Did you want me to start about having the space or?
Sure.
Well, I think I am the only one on the panel here that actually has a physical space in the Mills. And as we were meeting the other day, we started a discussion about sort of the advantages of it and how the wider community is working outside of the Mills now that it's so much easier, unfortunately, during COVID to do that, and losing some of the advantages of actually having a physical space here. This is Waltham Mills Open Studio Weekend, and this would have been, well, this is my 4th year here, and it was something that I just look forward to every year, to have the community come in, physically see my work, talk to the community, really feeling a part of it, and being able, and I had to clean my studio up, which is always great. There's a lot of activity that goes on a couple of weeks before Open Studios. And however, you know, you do sort of think about the long range. And when COVID hit, I was working from home for about 3 months and came back into the studio slowly, moved into a new space. But I really do want to hear from the other artists about how they look at sort of from the outside looking in and what they would feel the advantages are of having a physical space within the community and how they've been able to move on with their work during this, especially during this time.
Well, if I may, you know, attending Waltham Mills Open Studios, I see that community of artists, and I know of those artists, or of Susan, for example, being there, and other people, because you go there and you're part of it. But when you're just a Waltham resident like me, I, for example, have never heard of Maria or Bard or Marian, and you know, there's a community of artists out there that I have no way from which to communicate or to learn about. I have no idea that there's other people in Waltham doing what I do. Some of these people may live right near me. I don't know. But you know, one of the benefits I think that you have is you get a chance to show off your work or to be with other people. And I think my effort, which I think I miss, is having the ability to meet other artists and know other artists in Waltham, because this is an important community for me in many ways, and it would be nice if that was a little bit more open and accessible to everybody.
I feel very much the same way. I feel like, you know, since graduating and, you know, having a studio space in college, that was now, you know, 8 years ago, I've been working from home wherever I've lived. I've only lived in Waltham for the past 2.5-ish years now. And I have gone to open studio events and always felt this, you know, sort of sense of like, wow, this feels like these people are so legit, like they've made it, this is so real, compared to, you know, I have this little corner of my space at home that just has all of my art stuff in it. And I think there are ways that those of us who primarily work from our homes, you know, connect with the local community. I think the Lincoln Arts Project Gallery is a really big one for me, but also do a lot of connecting with just kind of the wider world, often online. And so it's been interesting to know that, like, I'm more connected to artists who live across the country or across the world compared to artists who, like, as you said, Ron, might just be down the street. Who knows?
Well, I'm more connected to artists in Newton than I am in Waltham, because there's a Newton Art Association, which I can join, and therefore I start meeting people there. But maybe we need something like that here as well.
It's such a good point, because when I bought my house in Waltham, I think 6-7 years ago, it was one of the first questions I had was, where's the group of just artists that I can meet that live here? And that's actually how I ended up getting involved with Open Studios, because I was like, well, there's already a community there. Let me see how I can support that, and then see like how that can potentially grow. But I'm more connected to artists in Somerville, because that's where I previously had a studio before I bought my house here in Waltham. And until like the general comics and illustration scene in like the greater Boston area. But I know there are other people who do what I do here in Waltham, and it's really hard for me to find them. And when we discover each other, it's like, whoa, I found out a neighbor 3 houses down from me does what I do. And it was like, hi, how do we find each other? So I love that this panel even exists, because I think just a year ago, I wouldn't have thought it would happen. And I just love meeting you all. It's so great.
Yeah, for me, I've really just met other artists as kind of self-taught. I didn't go through school doing visual art, so I was in very different fields. And after school was when I started my visual art career, and my connection was working at the list at MIT. So also with COVID, when that stopped being open for visitors, then I kind of lost that connection, my main connection to other artists. So mostly I've been connecting by when I get in shows, then I kind of get to know the artist a little bit, but that's very disparate. And, like some of you said, it's people across the country. I have done I feel I know some more in Concord at the Umbrella, but yeah, definitely getting that closer to home. And especially the way I do it, when I get to know people once I'm in a show, that's kind of finished work. So if you're in a space together, or if we had a community here, I think I would love getting feedback on work I've done, because once I'm in shows, that work is finished. So kind of being with other creative people or hearing from them throughout the process would definitely be really helpful.
Bart, I think what you're saying is so interesting about this idea of sort of what proximity to community would do to your practice, like this idea of sort of being in conversation with one another. And I'm so curious to hear about how you're all thinking about, like, so now, space is so fluid, right? So much of what we're doing now is virtual. We're not sitting, at the mills having this conversation. We're actually online. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts about just sort of what, even pre-COVID and during COVID, like, what does it mean to be in proximity? Like what actually how would that change your practice to have a community, right?
I'm probably seeing the weird things people are working on. One of my favorite things about going to art school, I actually went to college with Marian. I apologize. Marian. I went to school with him, and one of the most fun things was kind of like joking around and like, seeing what he was doing, and then him seeing what I was doing, and then like seeing what other stuff my other colleagues were doing as well. Yeah, so that was also really fun. It was interesting because, I don't know, I feel like a lot of what they did actually have an influence on what I was doing. And I do remember one of my pieces I was making was incredibly pointy and sharp. And I think Manya said something like, "Are you sure this is a good idea?" And I'm like, "Oh, probably not." So, yeah.
That's really funny. Oh yeah, I was thinking, for me personally, this has opened a lot of doors, and I've, connected to people much more. And it's actually, despite, all the stress and loss of some things, I really appreciate what I've gained in this time. Like, I'm doing some workshops on combining like environment and art, but if it was not during this time, it would only be in Washington. So now it's opened, and just like Waltham Open Studios, I would not have had this opportunity. So I really appreciate that. And for that workshop, they I think they just during COVID started a Slack channel. That's one way they started, and they have different sections, like one for, you know, comments on your works in progress and inspiration and all that stuff. So really, there is a lot of potential virtually to create that community.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. I think a couple months into this whole situation, a group of friends, actually including Will, and I got together and kind of were like, you know, we miss having this space to connect about work and works in progress and just kind of have like a general little art community, because, you know, many of us are friends with one another for years, but don't really like share space in normal circumstances. But, you know, previously, like getting together and being like, okay, I'm at your house and now I can see your studio and I can see what you're working on, that's gone. So we've gone to the internet, not Slack, but we use another app. We use Discord, and similarly have like a bunch of areas where people are sharing, you know, what are you making recently? What's something that's inspiring you? That kind of thing. And it's funny because I feel like we could have been doing that all along. And it's the sort of weird thing that this is what makes us do it now. And I think we'll probably keep doing it even after, you know, pandemic times are over.
I would
Well,
love that.
the difference here is you're computer savvy enough to do this. I'm a little bit of a different generation.
Well,
Zoom is quite an advance for me. So
yeah, fortunately, Discord is actually a lot more user-friendly than a lot of the older chat programs like IRC. You don't have to like type in like /identify and then like manually figure out the channel you're in. You can just like tap on the screen, figure it out, then like chat with people normally. It's become a lot more streamlined, is what I'm trying to say. So I wouldn't be too put off about it.
I just wish we could figure out a way to do it non-virtually even after the pandemic's over.
Yeah.
That's my main thing. Is like I've got the internet on lock. That's great, and it's necessary now. But it's finding like people IRL that I have a heck of a hard time with that, unless it's in my little silo. Like I can meet other cartoonists so easily. I know where they all are. We all friends. But it's getting that interdisciplinary conversation that happens so seamlessly at the mills, for example, that I can't replicate. And that's what I really am craving.
and
Maria,
the
I
other
think-
thing post-COVID, that would be nice, is just a chance to show your work with other people. I would really like that opportunity more than I certainly get.
I think that's so I'm hearing like two things that are really interesting. Like Maria, you know, like your point, and you know, Ron, earlier about sort of comfort level, right? So like this virtual space has opened up a lot of opportunity for folks, but not everybody, because not everybody is as comfortable online with different programs, nor do they maybe not want to be online. And then there's a lot of folks that don't necessarily have the access to all of the virtual tools that that some folks have. And so, you know, one of the constant I think comments that I've heard since for the 6 years that I've lived here is that so much of Waltham community building happens in these silos, right? So even before COVID, right, there were artists like, you know, your silo might have been, I have a studio at Waltham Mills, right? So you had your own sort of little community, or, you know, I am at Lincoln, or there's no sort of like cross-disciplinary conversation, right? Similarly, like in a virtual space, you're also going to find silos, right? So you artists will always find other artists, right? But I think what it's interesting is thinking about, okay, so like, what would it mean in this moment, right? Where we know, okay, we are like getting through this pandemic, but there will be the other side, right? So like, what are we learning now that we can then use for the future, right? So like, how can we as artists reimagine space, right? So like Ron, as an architect, right? Your background as an architect, you know, like you have a client who wants to either redesign or design something or redesign space in order to be more effective, right? So like as creative people with, you know, with such brilliant minds coming from such different directions, like how might we think about that?
That's good. That next step is hard.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a hard question, and I think a lot of it would be collaboration from people in those different fields. Probably would be great to bring in, but definitely the question of access is a hard one. So I feel like public centers are different than they were before. I feel like the library was, a kind of open space for people in the community to find information about things happening in the community. There's also, the online community now when you post on Facebook, but it's hard to connect those two. So just moving forward, I wonder if, because less people are going around, I wonder if there's a mashup between those, public posters to let people in the community know and the virtual ones somehow. So I don't have the answer right now, but I think that's definitely the question, to find the intersection of those, of where everyone has that information just as a starting point. Because then once you have that out there and people know, about the event or about this community, then it kind of can word of mouth grow, because it's not that large a community. So once those connections are made, I think it would spread pretty quickly and create that by itself.
Yeah, I think that hybridization of, before having space that is physical and public, and now having space that's primarily online, I think it's interesting. Anybody I talk to in any context, there are some people who are like, oh man, like this makes me miserable. I wish I could connect with people in person. And then there's other folks who are like, actually, I like this. I love being able to connect from behind my screen and, type things out rather than having to have a verbal conversation and face to face and all that. So I think there's some really interesting stuff about accessibility that has opened up for for many of us who are shy or introverted, or who take a long time to say things out loud. There's like this very interesting advantage. So I think, like, while there's been so much lost, there's also been a lot gained. And I think to your point, Bard, like hybridizing in a way that people can actually have the best of both, and have those things cross-pollinate rather than exist completely separate from each other, would be incredible.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Also, definitely agree, because I am just cartoonishly bad at pronouncing words as opposed to reading them. So yeah, but I will say also that before the pandemic, the place that I've really like met the most amount of people and been like kind of interacting with the most amount of people has been Monique Rancourt's gallery during the various different events, sales, and shows that she's put on. So that's, yeah, just want to put it up.
Yeah, it's been amazing that I feel in some ways I've been more active during this pandemic socially, because I've missed so much normally with a 3-year-old in tow. So it's like I can attend all these virtual events now that I normally couldn't, because I was like, oh, I'm childcare and also it's bedtime, so I can't do anything. So it's like, great, I can do stuff now. It's coming to me. It's wonderful. So I don't want that to disappear, although I really do miss interacting with people in person at events like at the Lincoln Arts Project or Monique's Gallery. Like those have been, that's where I've met most people I've known in Waltham, in the arts community. It's been such a crucial space. So yeah.
One of the things that I have been thinking a lot about is, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we're seeing a lot of closures, right, of stores and public space. So, Monique's Gallery is wonderful because it's on it's on Moody Street. And for those of you that don't know, and it's, and you walk by it, there's a lot of foot traffic up and down the street normally. And so, I think it's an interesting thing to think about, like if we were to untether ourselves from thinking about art only happens here or there, right? And we really think about like, okay, well, in this moment, there's actually, like you said, Maria, like there is opportunity that is made that maybe didn't seem as attractive or possible before. Now it's sort of sitting right at our fingertips, right? I mean, think about all of the space, right? So we're tools that we need to build community, right? Are like space, right? Whether that's virtual or physical, and visibility, right? In trying to find ways to be more inclusive and to invite people. And perhaps maybe right now between Main and Moody Street, where there's a lot of access, maybe there's some interesting relationships between artists really partnering with local businesses partnering with, businesses that are like, for lease, that are empty sort of temporarily, to really think about, can we use that space that isn't used right now? Can we actually form partnerships? Can we actually, have conversations with business owners to really like help educate and foster more of a interconnection between art and business? And so I think that is really interesting. And Bard, your point earlier about like signage and public space is also a great one, right? People, I think, often forget how powerful public space is and what an important and equalizing space it is, right? You don't need money to go in, and you don't need an invite to go into public space. Public space is for everybody. And so while not all art maybe is best viewed in a public space, you might want to leave, your stretched canvas with beautiful paintings, like just sort of sitting there unattended. But is there another way to really think about your creativity right now in this moment that fosters a culture of creativity here in Waltham that then builds more and more?
Well, I think we all agree that we want to do something, so.
I think that idea of partnering with, businesses is a great idea, because I know in other, and it, because not everyone's connected, this might be happening and I have no idea, but I know in other cities and towns, like storefronts are being used as little galleries right now, because as some galleries are closed, they're opening up their window space. It depends on the business, of course, but also, Will, what you were saying, definitely last year's Waltham Open Studios was where I kind of first connected to into the newsletter. So I kind of got connected that way. And I think it's those events that are for the public that really start to open those doors and connections. And I wonder if kind of what both of you are talking about, I wonder if kind of public art is a good way for signage. So if our art and our creative practices, even something like if it wasn't something that was good to be, put in a building or just in a public building, but if it were, projected on some building or something, that kind of visibility to kind of bring people in and make them realize, the art is already here, there's a community for you, and just kind of get connections that way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
In a perfect world, we would probably be able to utilize some of the buildings that have been sitting unoccupied for over 20 or so years in the city but I don't know if it's going to happen. Yeah.
I think the thing that I see as like, oh wow, that just looks so visibly empty to me recently is like the parking lots of some of the buildings that are, like office buildings. I live relatively near one of them, and like, there's like 3 floors of parking, and I have not seen a single car in there for months. What's even happening in there? I wonder how much some of that can be, I guess, like momentarily reappropriated for the arts, because right now it's just like, there's nothing there, and it's sheltered. It's it's under a roof. It's just open. So I think like you think about storefronts and things that are sort of closed down right now, but then there's all this other space that's just kind of sitting there too.
Yeah. I grew up here. I've been here since the 90s, and like there's a lot of spaces like that just kind of like sit empty for many, many years. And from what I've heard, a lot of it's because the landlords just do not want to rent to people unless they pay a very specific price. And yeah, it's a bit of a thing. But
Well, one thing that I think is really clear is that there is really such a thing as people power. And if you really want it, you you know, you come together as a group and you advocate for yourselves and what you're looking to do, things do happen. I think that, you know, we're accustomed to thinking that, oh, it can't be done, right? You know, there's too many rules, or there's too many this or that. But maybe when one person goes and tries to change things up, you know, it doesn't happen. But perhaps if, you know, there was a group effort to get behind something and advocate for more art in community, that you might see the needle change. Because I think now more than ever, I mean, people need more art in their lives. People need opportunities to connect. You know, art at its very best is an expression of joy, sorrow, all of this whole spectrum of human emotions, right? And it also has the amazing ability to like critically examine the world that we're living in now, right? To connect with people, I think amplify curiosity as an incredible skill that humans actually possess, right? Or quality that they possess. And so I think that, you know, people are so, you know, aside from recent news, people have been so sort of, you know, so burdened with the pandemic and burdened with the political climate. And now, I mean, despite the results of the election, we are such a polarized community. We're such a polarized country, right? And so we have this, like, you all have these amazing abilities to really use that skill and really think about, like, in what ways can we actually form community that aren't just artists in an artist community, but artists living in a wider community. And so I think that, you know, it's hard because we all have our jobs and we're trying to have an artistic practice, and maybe some of us have families, and, you know, it's hard to carve out time to work towards something that with an unknown end, right? But I think you don't know I think there's power in people.
I have found that also reaching outside of this community has really helped by joining some other organizations that, you know, within Boston mostly. And it really expands what your practice starts looking like when you do get out into a wider community. I'm very active in National Association for Women Artists in the Mass chapter, and we find venues all over. Maybe we'll find a venue in Waltham. I mean, it's a matter of work. It takes work to do all of this that we're talking about, and energy. Not to say it can't be done, but there does have to be a person or a force that is going to sort of bring all of this together and start doing the work. I know before I got here, there was a fair amount of work done within the community in Waltham and the artists on Moody Street with the restaurants and with some of the businesses. But it, again, you know, we as artists are doing our work, and we may have work outside, we may have families, and it's just a matter of getting the energy and the right amount of people to start doing this so other people can sort of be part of this as well. It's up to maybe some of you younger people to step up and, you know, lead the way. It would be fabulous. New energy.
Well, I'm old and I still have energy.
Same.
So I think that, Susan, you were sort of pointing to it with sort of your work outside of Waltham, and really thinking about, like, just things that are made possible by sort of like diversifying your community and the folks that you connect with. And I think Maria had spoken to it before, and also Bard, like, you know, I just think about the different ways in which, like, we can, there's the artistic community that lives here, and then there's many folks that live in the community that are also creative that maybe aren't feeling as connected. And so I wonder if, like, part of this is is working towards getting Waltham more comfortable and familiar with art in their everyday lives, right? And so then it becomes like a no-brainer. Like, of course we should have public art. Of course we should have, you know, a dedicated, you know, art, cultural center for just for artists or whatever it is. But, you know, like Bard, you were talking about a lot of your interest in like working on like social issues or partnering with like social organizations. And like, you know, that when we talk about community, you know, I think we also like need to address like inclusivity, right? And so, and access. And so in what way are we, in what way as artists living in Waltham, like, you know, we want community and we want to, I think, celebrate the diversity that's here, but in what ways are we actually inclusive to all the artists, right? And so, you know, it would be interesting, you know, to hear a little bit more, Bard, from you about like your interest in sort of, is there, you know, have you connected with any of the social organizations here? Is there a way in which maybe artists could connect and provide some sort of service that that's not obvious maybe now, but through conversation might happen?
Yeah, definitely. That's a lot on my mind. And personally, so in between undergrad and grad school, I did AmeriCorps. And so I worked at the, if anyone knows, the Prospect Hill Community Center. So a lot of, I returned to that a lot. And I think there's these different communities in Waltham, and bringing them together, there's a lot of good that, you know, the artist community could do, partnering with them. You know, when I was there, it was kind of, it was trying to get organizations to come in for the kids, so like Healthy Waltham and things like that. But at the time I wasn't, you know, art centered really. I did theater, but knowing this community is here, I think there'd be amazing opportunities for demonstrations or festivals or anything that would benefit both sides. And really there's kind of a richness there of possibilities of, you know, events to get your art out there. And I know not everyone is, I have a background with like teaching and connecting with younger children, so that's not for everyone's art. There's not always a connection there, but there is a possibility, I think, for a lot of, you know, exposure and also deep connection to the community that way, of letting them know that this community is there. Maybe they go into that later. Maybe they are inspired to study it, and maybe we can tap into, you know, anything from like maybe funding opportunities, because I applied for a grant for, while I was there, for like a pollinator tree, but I'm sure there are art grants, if we were working with the community, that would be getting our art out there into the community and also enriching the town.
Thank you for sharing that. Sorry, I was muted. So, I mean, one of the things that I'm going to just do a little bit of a plug, but for the Waltham Cultural Council. So we provide funding opportunities for artists and organizations that are looking to, that have a project that is based here in Waltham or is to the benefit of the Waltham community. And our deadline is in December. It's December 14th. And so this is something that's definitely worth looking into, right? So if there's a way in which like artists are interested in partnering with local business or a social organization, or just trying to sustain their practice, you know, and want to, you know, and need some help like with operating support or so I just want to share that with you all, that is a resource that does exist here. Although our budget is slightly, you know, it's slightly less than it was obviously before COVID. There is still funding available. And so I think it's important to think about, you know, that as an opportunity to sort of, you know, because there's the, you do the art because you love it, and you're trying, and some of us are trying to make a living off of our art, and some of it are doing it just because it's a passion and we love to do it. And so there's all different types of ways of working. And I think that not everybody is interested in partnering with social organizations or doing this type of work, and that's okay too. But I think it's just interesting to hear from you all and sort of thinking about, like, from your own perspectives, like what that might look like, and what might be possible, because now is exciting. I mean, we can reimagine, we can start to rebuild, and restructure the community in the way that we want it to. And I think we could certainly have a list of, well, we can't, but there's also a longer list of we can, and can. So I'm trying to stay on the side of optimism of what this moment can mean.
Yeah, and there are actually a lot of grants out there for arts related stuff. I wasn't really aware of just how many there were until I worked at Metalworks, and the director there keyed me into like a huge list of them. And there are also just a lot of, like, you can submit really off the wall ideas to them, and they will sometimes take them. Someone that was in our grade at Mass Art got a grant in 2012 to, like, turn an ice cream truck into like a mobile art van, and he did it. And yeah, it was a thing to see.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's like kind of like such an incredibly, I mean, Waltham is like got the storied history of innovation, and like what an amazingly innovative idea to like take something that seems so so out of the box, and to turn it into an opportunity to like to spread art, as far and wide. I think that's amazing. And just like coming back to this idea of like community, like the artistic community, not necessarily the wider community, but thinking about ways in which to I think foster this opportunity. I love hearing about the sort of the virtual communities that are already happening, whether it's on Discord or whatever it is. But I wonder if like there's a way in which that can happen elsewhere, right? Like, is there like a central place in Waltham? There could be like a board, like a community board, right? Like, where like Ron decides he wants to, talk about Gerhard Richter, and he's, and you can post up on the board and say like, I'm going to do a Zoom call at like, on Saturday at 1, and I'm just going to talk about, let's talk about it. So, it'd be interesting to see if that, if that's of interest, or if that's a way that maybe, community can continue to expand.
Yeah, I think focusing on the places that people still do go publicly, whether it's, walking down Moody Street or walking down Main Street or going into the grocery store or the post office, even if it's just simple flyers, having stuff up to notify people who might just be going about their business, that would be such a cool way to pull people into things that we keep coming back to this as the conversation where like the people who know about it already know, and they're already in the community. How do we bring in people who don't know, who might not have even thought to check because their community is online all over the world and not grounded where they are in the neighborhood? So I think finding kind of clever ways to do that without necessarily relying on an online source is a fantastic idea. I love that.
Or A-frames at the intersections. That's a great way. I mean, what a great opportunity. You're sitting there in your car and you're just, dozing off, and you see Ron's Zoom call about Gerhard Richter, and you're like, yes, that's exactly what I need right now. Anyway.
It's amazing what can be done on Zoom these days. I mean, I've been doing virtual life drawing sessions on Tuesdays and Fridays out of Provincetown, and there are artists from Italy, and the models are from Maryland, and it's quite amazing.
Yeah, and I'm going to plug the museum a little bit here too, but the Rose Art Museum, even though we're close to the public right now, we have an amazing collection of artworks that are available online. And so that's something else really, I think, that we don't think about is like, as a resource, right? We have this collection that we could really look at virtually, right? And there are these recordings of, artist talks. And, I think that's another way to form communities, to say like, maybe it's like once a month, people, they know like, okay, something's going to happen. Like the artistic community is going to, someone within the community is going to like sign up for space, right? And just talk about it, because that's what I miss. I think there's the studio crits, which are like so invaluable, right? But there's also just talking about art. It's also just, which I think is so important. And so it'd be wonderful to see some of the resources that we already have here, really used even more. But what else? What in the spirit of community, what else do you need as artists right now?
So we talked a little bit just when we were brainstorming the other day about, and again, this kind of, I imagine this happened in studios, but as having like a home studio, it really like calls to me, intrigues me, is kind of a lending library or in this community, connecting people, their what the different strengths and also tools and everything in between in terms of art. Something that's really helped me recently as a mixed media artist, I like combine a lot of different random items, and I've joined a like Facebook group that's zero waste in Boston, and so people just have the craziest things that they don't want to throw away, so they offer them up, and it's kind of this barter, and not even barter thing, but just people. So transforming that maybe to the artist community would really be helpful for sharing, something past critiques, tools, and expertise even.
I love that. That's a great idea. That's like we were mentioning that Waltham has a mutual aid network, and wouldn't it be great to like kind of tap into that? I think there's probably many folks that could use some of the same creative tools, other than artists that are working artists, families, communities that are looking for, how many extra crayons do you have lying around, and how many extra like pieces of paper that whatever. And so I think that is sort of like partnering in a way that is mutually beneficial. Also helps, I think, to really think about what the artistic community can do for the community at large, for sure.
I think about that a lot with folks who are creative, who are making stuff, who might not think about themselves as artists. Because I definitely have run into so many people who say like, oh, I'm not an artist, I can't do this. And it's like, you're doing this amazing creative thing that could absolutely, if you wanted to call it art, then it would be art. But you don't think of it that way because you see art as this thing that's like really inaccessible and lofty. And I have to assume that there's plenty of people in Waltham who are in that situation who could be, part of what we're all doing, if only there were the sort of exchange to invite them in.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Mayor. Like that's such a an external expression of of art in everyday life and in people's lives. And so that's, I think, what I was thinking about at the beginning, sort of talking about reimagining space and designing space, like not necessarily when you're unmoored from a physical address, right? Where art happens. Art, like you said, Mayor, art happens everywhere, right? And different types of art, different styles of art, different types of making. And so I think that it would be lovely to see more external expressions of that, to, I think, to become more inclusive, right? To say like, you don't have to necessarily be in the mills in order to be an artist. Creativity happens everywhere and in so many different forms.
I think one other thing, I tried a couple of years ago to actually rent space at Waltham Mills for open studios, even though I'm not an artist. I mean, I was hoping maybe I could rent a wall or something. It would be nice if that sort of opportunity would be able to occur as well. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I'm not a professional artist. I'm not making a living at this. So I really don't, at this point, have the need to expend that much money for a professional studio for something I can do at home. But it's nice to have that opportunity to be part of the community as well.
Agreed. Anyone else want to share any thoughts as we're sort of winding down a little bit? We've covered it all. We've solved it all. Done.
I do want to say, though, that I really do appreciate the opportunity to be involved with Waltham Mills this year. It was a real thrill for me, and I'm glad that this occurred. In bad way, the pandemic has offered me this, but I'm glad that it did in some ways.
Yeah, I have so many ideas in my head of stuff I want to do when I can start gathering in places again, but I feel like everything's on hold until then. So, but once the gates are open, it's going to be awesome.
I wanted to thank everybody that sort of has been behind the scenes for this year's Open Studios. It was it's quite a feat to be able to do this, and that we're all here together chatting. And it's really been months in the making, and I think everybody sort of rose to the occasion to do this. And it's really hopeful, because this may be sort of our new reality at this point, going forward. And as we've all said today, it does offer new opportunities, because none of us would have, except Maria, I know, but we wouldn't have been together in this group if it weren't for this. And so I just want to leave on a really positive note about that this is a really strong community. And personally, I'm really grateful that we've reached out, and I've met you, all of you, and just, continue doing what you're doing, and we'll all get there. We'll all get there. So thank you.
Well said. Thank you, Susan. And, we did have a question about participation. So it has been, I'm so pleased to see that Open Studios this year has been opened up to the wider Waltham community, because I think it is so important, and it is an amazing opportunity to be able to be in the space here, right, with so many different artists who some have known each other and some have just met the other day. And so I think it's very exciting. One of the questions was, how did you actually learn about participating? So I think maybe thinking about next year, like hopefully this won't be virtual and will be, or maybe it'll be hybrid, like someone mentioned, which could also be uniquely interesting. But how would somebody get involved in the future that isn't normally in doesn't have a space in the mills? Does anyone know?
I would encourage everyone to join the mailing list, which is on the Open Studios website. And that's usually where we put out any kind of information about open calls. We don't spam, but if it's like really important in the off season for Open Studios, we'll let people know about stuff. So, and follow us on social media too. We try to put out info about in the community stuff, like new spaces that open, like Watch City Arts. We put out a notice about them, because we want to support the Waltham like ecosystem of the arts, not just our own organization. Like, we want everybody to flourish, so we all succeed. So
nice. Thank you, Maria. We do. We want everyone to flourish. And one of the, the Cultural Council also does help promote anything arts and cultural that is involved here in Waltham. So if there's an upcoming show that you have, or like when Ron does his conversation on Gerhard Richter, when that launches, we can post about that. And so there's definitely a few different spaces where we can continue to promote and I think try to encourage more community online until we are in person. One of the things that many of us have been working on is to reinstate the Waltham Cultural Commission here. It's a municipal commission for arts and culture. And that's something that several people were working on, myself included, last year, that did go to city council to try to get things organized, because I think what we really need is a nexus for all of these things, right? So regardless of whether we're virtual or in person, I think that, you know, space, however it manifests, is very important, and having a central space, you know, online and in person is really important, and a place for people to know they can go for one, you know, for a one-stop shop kind of situation with information and resources and a calendar of events and all of those things. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, you know, folks can definitely feel free to email to join the Waltham Arts Coalition. Is that right, Maria? Web page, which has been a little bit dormant, but advocacy is important. So if you want to make it happen, let's do it. Let's do it. So if we don't have any more questions, which doesn't look like it in the chat, I also want to just kind of piggyback off of Susan and just say thank you all for sharing the space together. This has been so amazing. It's been wonderful to get to know everybody, Maria and Mare and Susan, Ron, Will, and Bard. Thank you for just generously sharing your thoughts with us today, and for inviting me to be a part of the conversation. It's been really wonderful, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth.
What a great conversation. I'm really jazzed because I think I've seen people ready to plant seeds and help make them grow. I think this is super. Thanks so much for your time, everybody.
Thanks, Alana.
Thanks
Yeah.
so much, Alana.
Yep.
Yeah,
No,
thank you so
thank
much for the
you.
opportunity.
Bye, everyone.
And check out all of those profiles on walthamopenstudios.org. Here we go. Website traffic peaking now. Bye.
4 o'clock.
Get excited.
Pop
That's
in.
right. Yeah, pop in at 4 o'clock. We've got a whole bunch more studio snapshot, including Susan.
Yeah.
So you want to see her studio? Here's your chance.
Floor. So yeah, they're fun. And Sarah's just done such a tremendous job. I mean, whew, really.
No kidding. She really has.
Yeah.
She really has.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Make good art.
That should be our exit for everybody, no matter whether you consider yourself an artist. But the fact of the matter is you do create, and your movements and your contributions are all art. So make great art ought to be maybe our theme for next year.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.